on real relationships. My name is Sophie Passon, and I am a relationship expert, international speaker, and best-selling author of the book, Your Other Half. I decided to start this podcast because, in my opinion, relationships are currently not really being portrayed in what we really are. So whether you're watching TV, you're at work, social media, the perception that's given to people is wrong. And my aim is to talk about what happens in the real world. So I might not agree with everything that is said by my guest, but it is their chance to express their opinions and the stories. And today we've got someone who is a communication expert. And we're going to talk about communication in general, not obviously, I was going to say not just in relationships. What I mean by that is not just in romantic relationships, but kind of across the board, whether it's at work or in a family setting or even when we talk to ourselves, that sort of stuff. So I'm welcoming Trisha Lewis. Hi, Trisha.
Hiya. Hi, Sophie. Nice to be here.
And nice to have you here. So, can you tell us a bit about yourself, please, so that people know more about you?
Okay, I don't obviously want to blabber on about myself, but I'll give you a quick outline. I'm Trisha Lewis. I am a communication coach. I help people communicate better. That's the bottom line. I prefer doing this one-to-one. So most of my clients come to me and we have a lovely, safe, supportive space here, and they can explore and they can let down their guard and not worry about being judged, and sort of get rid of some of their default habits. So it's a really kind of action-y type coaching, not just talking. We experiment a bit. My background is actually as an actor and a speaker, so I have all of that malarkey, all your sort of presentation skills and public speaking from way back when.
You're walking the talk.
I'm definitely, and also talking the talk. So I'm still going out doing quite a lot of, talks as guest speakers, at various events and everything. So yeah, I am definitely still talking the talk.
Okay. So as you know, I also deal with communication, although in a completely different way to you. I do mainly with neuro-linguistic programming, or NLP. And the way I do it is more around understanding yourself and therefore others so that you can communicate better. So tell us about how you do it. How do you teach people how to communicate better? How do you empower them through communication?
Yeah, I think empower is definitely the better word there. But actually, we are not that different, Sophie, because I always work from the inside out, if that makes sense. Most definitely. I would never, I might be doing a sort of short, intense burst when somebody wants to rehearse something for an event, a talk, and we might therefore concentrate more on the delivery tactics. However, if you separate everything out, i.e. your self-talk, your content, and your movement and body and delivery tactics, it doesn't really work. They have to work as one.
And I guess, a lot of people have got fear of public speaking, but it's probably something that comes from something else. It's not just like, I'm standing up and I'm scared. It highlights an issue we've got inside.
Yeah, it's a huge one, isn't it? And of course, this does go back to, and you will do this a lot as well, because this again is across the board in communication of any sort, is this ancient wiring that we've got with our fight, flight and freeze mechanism, which is, really handy if we are running away from a saber-toothed tiger.
Yes.
Not many of those in Southbourne. I don't know about you, Sophie, but it's a bit of a bore on many an occasion, because it tricks us, doesn't it? And we're thinking that something life-threatening is about to happen, when it's not.
I remember, I'm not so much going to say my first experience of public speaking, because it wasn't even mine, but when I was working in security, and in the second company I worked for, one of the senior managers there was, a delightful chap, would not have a problem to talk on a personal level, across the table if you're having dinner. The minute he had to stand up to say, a few words, and we're not even talking to large audience, the same people that were around the table and had dinner the night before, he couldn't get the words out.
Yeah, it is literally a thing that can kick in really quickly, and it's, I suppose at the heart of it is the fear. Obviously, the fear isn't that those people are going to come and eat you alive. The fear is that they're going to judge you,
exactly.
That you're going to say something stupid. And that, of course, is the same in personal relationships, isn't it? You know, first date, basis. Oh, don't judge me. Don't let me say something stupid, and then they'll think I'm this, and then they'll think I'm that, and of course that's when you start going way too far into your own head.
Yeah.
And I think self-consciousness is a thing that I try to get people to explore quite a lot as well, because people don't always realize how much they're going back inside their own head, and it's not doing them any favors.
And talking of this, self-talk, you know,
yes.
where we speak to ourselves. God, we're so harsh on ourselves. We never dream of talking. And it was funny because obviously people don't know this, but just before we started this, we were both a bit early. So we just carried on doing our own things. And I could hear you talking to yourself in the background. And I thought, I've got to be careful, because I've got to be careful what I say to myself. But she might hear. But it's really, you know, we don't understand. We don't realise how much we beat ourselves up.
No, I know. We do, absolutely. And you're quite right. If we treated anyone else like we treat ourselves, we'd be had up, you know, we'd be put away. And the thing is that, again, this goes back to this ancient wiring, because, of course, our negative thinking is part of our survival mechanism. So we're not like equipped with, say, you know, a chameleon able to change our skin color to protect ourselves. So humans, right from way back when, with this whole brain thing developing, their survival was to be able to think danger, you know. And so we've still got our biggest tendency is to go to negative thinking, not positive thinking. So we have to really give ourselves a jolly good talking to say, what are you doing? You're doing that thing again. As you know, I have a area of special interest in a thing called imposter syndrome, which is all about, you know, this idea that you're, you know, you give yourself completely irrational messages about what's going on. So yeah, to be honest, Sophie, I'm utterly obsessed and fascinated by what goes on in our brain, as you can probably guess.
Yeah. And so why would you say it is so important to communicate properly?
Right. The words that I use, which is a very simple one, over and over again, is listen. It's like the biggest word in communication, in my opinion, and not just my opinion. Because even when you're right, so going from talking to yourself, right, your self-talk, you need to listen. You need to be aware, not just let it go on like a background track. You know, you need to, whoa, what's happening here? I call it feelings forensics, actually, where you kind of take this stuff out and you lay it out and start thinking, well, that doesn't even make any sense.
Yeah.
So you listen to yourself. You listen even when you're talking, doing a talk or a presentation. I still tell people to have a listening mindset, so that they are constantly connected to their audience, as if that audience could ask a question or have a conversation back with you, even if they're not. And then, you know, literally, the way people feel when you give them the gift of listening is amazing. And people don't understand how little they sometimes have to do to gain the trust of, you know, somebody. It is often, they think, well, I didn't say very much. You think, well, no, that's why.
Yeah, and it's interesting you should say that, because since I started doing what I do, obviously I listen a lot more, you know, in what I do. But what I found is that even in real life, I often now find the need to, I want to speak, but people are probably not letting me, if that makes sense. Because they're so used to me listening, that all of a sudden I'm going to have this burst of verbal diarrhea, because I'm like, no, actually, I need to speak now. I'm fed up of listening all the time. You need to listen to me. And then even if I speak very, very quickly and I've got it all out and I feel like I've taken too much of her time, which is stupid, really. Because
it's a really difficult balance. And I know exactly what you mean. It happens a lot at things like networking events, doesn't it? You part of me sometimes comes away thinking, well, I did a lot of listening, but I'm not sure that many people were listening to me, or gave me a chance to say very much, actually. So it's a really fine balance, because of course you don't just want to be a person who sits there and nods and says yes and that's interesting. That would be hideous. So you've got to be actively present, and you've got to be balancing the urge to just quickly come in because you're very enthusiastic about something, and I want this, and so you've almost interrupted them mid-flow, and you're oh yes, I know what you mean, that happened to me, blah blah blah. You've got to pull back a little bit from that, and just kind of remain present, rather than then hanging on to this desperate thing you need to say, and therefore not listening anymore and just waiting for this moment.
And this is it. This is exactly that. A lot of people do that as well, because they want to say whatever it is they want to say so much, but they're not listening. They're not hearing what you're saying.
Because there'll always be a moment. The biggest trick is just to stay present. And I know it sounds really like, oh yeah, whatever, be present. A lot of
people don't do it.
It's so difficult to do. We're so distracted, Sophie, aren't we? I mean, there's so much going on. Noise, mobile phones, just in our head, worrying about something else that we've got to do. It's just it's a constant distraction. So the actual art of being present not only is something you have to practice like any other skill, it's like a muscle you have to, but it also, when you get to do it more, you feel really good. It has a really nice effect on your, it's quite calming, and you kind of slow down a bit, but you don't feel, there's a difference between being quieter, slowing down a bit, and being invisible and feeling like you're a nobody. And I think it took me a long time to learn that, certainly it took me a long time to figure that out, because I always thought, well, I'm just invisible, no one's taking any notice of me, I'm useless, I'm like a wallflower, at parties or whatever. But actually, you can have a lot of presence in quietness.
So I think as well, saying that, in my family, if you all meet for a Christmas dinner, just because I suppose, they were from a large family, so the one who shouts the loudest will be heard the most, I suppose. But I do find it difficult sometimes to have an actual proper conversation, because you've got 20 people around the table who all want to make the point. And then you find that you either start, as you say, retreating and not saying anything, because you're like, oh, do you know what, I can't be bothered to shout anymore. Or
and I mean, and
the same thing.
And I get, to be honest, we don't live in a perfect world, so there will be times where it just doesn't work, and you have to, and then you just have to be realistic about that. You just have to say, do you know what, this it's kind of annoying me a bit. This everyone's just kind of shouting and on broadcast mode, and and actually this isn't really doing it for me, so I'm just going to be polite, sort of go with the flow a bit, and then I'm going to escape. and maybe there may be one or two people that I want to catch up with on a one-to-one, because that, I think we're going to get a lot more out of that.
And I think on the same token, anyway, if you're in that environment where you need to shout your point across, quite literally, people are not listening, are they? So if you're trying to actually have a conversation, it's not a conversation. It's just like people throwing opinions at one another. Maybe, agree most of the time, but it's not. They're not listening. They're not in listening mode. They just want to get across, and that's what everybody starts to do then.
I think the listening thing is huge, and the vast majority of people are no ruddy good at it at all, to be perfectly honest. And that's not being me, because that would have applied to me as well. The point is, it's like I say about communication. I used Tiger Woods as an example, and somebody told me, don't use Tiger Woods, use Roger Federer, because Tiger Woods has got some interesting history, but there we go. I think we're all interesting human beings. But anyway, the comparison I was making is that he didn't come out of the womb being able to play golf, and neither did Roger Federer being able to play tennis at that standard. It took hours and years of practice and learning, and more practice and learning. And communication is no different. The problem is that because it seems like such an obvious thing. So, for instance, Sophie, I was a mature student at Bournemouth Uni, and I did a degree called, believe it or not, communication.
Yeah.
And so when people asked me, "Oh, what was your degree?" I said communication, and then most people came back with a quip. "Oh, so you know how to talk to people then?" Which was hilarious, but I think.
Funny you should say that, right? A lot of people think they know how to build and nurture relationships. And let me tell you, about 85% don't have a clue, because it's so obvious, isn't it?
Yeah.
So I know what you mean.
3 years. I mean, I promise you, I'd learned, it was quite a lot to study in 3 years and everything. I mean, my dissertation, for instance, was on the subject of apology, and that's just one. And I dived really deep into apology, saying sorry. And, that's just one tiny, tiny little fleck of dust out of the huge beach of, little granules of communication skills. It's huge. It's a huge thing. So great fun to get better at.
And so exactly what you're just saying. So how do you ensure that a message is conveyed properly? So for instance, an apology, but also what you mean maybe in a romantic relationship, but also, and one that as I've just said, I do listen to people actively. I do it on purpose. I force myself to, even if I hear my mind going off or whatever. But sometimes you meet people and you meet them like 4, 5, 6 times. And by the 6th time, you're like, I know you, but who are you and what do you do? You can't ask that. You're supposed to know. But they've either made it so boring, I still don't remember what they do. So how do you make sure that the message is done properly and remembered?
How do you engage? It's like, I think there's this whole thing about vulnerability, isn't there, that gets talked about quite a lot. Now, I'm quite an open person. Everyone's different, and I don't say that everybody's got to wear their heart on their sleeve. We're all different human beings. However, if you're not a heart on the sleeve type person, I think you just have to be a little bit more aware that there are moments where you need to give a little bit more, whether it's a little story or something that illustrates. Story, of course, is really powerful, because that
people remember that.
The people, people that again, I won't go into the science of the brain, but story gets into a part of our brain that triggers emotions and all sorts and good feelings. So it's really good to try and hook something around a little story or a little example. And I think that, again, if you're listening, this is why it just keeps coming around to listening, because if you're listening in a conversation, then you will, and I mean listening as in the whole thing, as in picking up the vibes from people and their kind of energy,
tone of voice, what we're not saying.
This is very much your thing, Sophie, and their body language and the little subtle things. And if you're really there present, I mean, I'm a frustrated detective, there's no question about it. If I could start again, I think I'd train as a detective. But I've seen too many on TV, obviously. But yeah, it is that kind of mode. You are picking up a lot of stuff, but and then what happens is that you're feeding back and the clues. But people often, I mean, I've got to think about shyness as well, because I think I was shy when I was little. At least it was either shy or lacking in
confidence.
Because there's a bit of a cross people. That's a big subject we won't go into, but I certainly really struggled going into places. It was really odd because I took up acting quite young, but I think that was there's a reason.
A way to deal with it.
That's a reason. But the thing of, I mean, that again, it's I think it's self-consciousness. I think that if you're self-conscious, you lose the connection with people, and then they lose the connection with you, and that, you know, so the being present thing means that you can. I know what I was going to say about shyness. People say, I don't know what to talk about. I don't know what on earth am I going to say when I'm there in a room? And I think, well, if you're present, you will pick things up. Like it might be something in the room, something outside, a noise you hear, something somebody's wearing, a news item that's just flashed up on the TV. It could be anything. If you're present, you can actually use that as a little bit of conversation. You don't.
And I guess it's a bit like chit chat. Yeah, I personally hate chit chat, but chit chat is the beginning of a deeper conversation because, as you say, if you use then a story to illustrate your point, or even the other person, that reminds me of, and it then becomes a real exchange.
Exactly.
About the weather.
It's like a real knock-on effect, because you could start off by saying something about the weather. Okay, that's the tradition. You could say, "Crikey, you know, so summer's over by the looks of it. You know, I thought we were going to have a heat wave." And the other person says, "Yeah, wasn't it a brilliant summer though? I've never got a tan like this before." I said, "Wow, yeah, you know, you have got a great tan. Have you actually been abroad?" "Well, no, but I've got a beach hut on such and such." "Oh my gosh, my auntie's got a beach hut on such and such. Is it one of those?"
And you start to go on.
You know, but before you know what you've done, you're on to something quite heavy and big and major, and you just started with talking about the weather. But you've got to be present. So don't just think. So if in your head you're thinking, "Oh my God, I'm just talking about the weather. How boring. I'm really boring. I'm talking about the weather," then you're never going to get anywhere, because you've gone right back inside your head. If you think, "Okay, we're having a little talk about the weather. Yeah, the weather can be quite interesting."
It's about being open, isn't it? It's about being open. Also, you mentioned you being shy and stuff. So what about introverts as opposed to extroverts? And also, I would say those in the middle. What I mean by those in the middle, I probably would qualify myself as that. I was probably very much an introvert when I was younger. I then turned total extrovert. And I'm probably completely in the middle now, where I can be really extrovert in some situation. But if there's too many extroverts in a room, I will revert back to introvert, because I don't want to actually, fight for attention. Or I would just be introvert because that's the mood of the day. So if you're dealing with different people like that, how do you handle that?
Well, number one, I'd say we were pretty much on the same spectrum there, Sophie, most definitely. And being an actor, a communication coach, all that stuff, people tend to assume that I'm an extrovert. And in fact, I did the Myers-Briggs kind of one of those personality profiling things once.
Oh, I'm extrovert in that.
Well, I had an I in it. I had introvert in it. And a business mentor I was working with at the time absolutely refused to accept. He said, "You must have done it wrong." And I said, "No, because I know that is true." Because he said, "But you get such a lot of energy out of being around people." And I thought, well, yes, I do, but I put myself into that energy. I make it happen. But I do need to get away and go into my own space. And I also am perfectly happy in my own space. But weirdly, that is something that has developed over the years. So I agree, I'm what they call an ambivert, which is a good place to be, really, where you can sort of pull on the energies of both, because you're going to be in a group of people, and there are going to be introverts, there are going to be extroverts, and you need to
be able to relate to both.
Balance in the middle somewhere. And I agree with you. If I'm surrounded by extroverts, I retreat quite quickly. But surrounded with introverts, I want to try and, if you like, this sounds really bad, help them. That sounds really motherly. But I want to try and encourage and facilitate them to feel in a safe space to be able to communicate in a relaxed way, and not think that they've got to shout and be terribly impressive and over the top. So I'm sort of always got my little antennae out, shall we say. Yeah.
And what about, because sometimes you meet people and you've done the weather, you've tried to find something to talk about, but there really is nothing to talk about. You just, there isn't. What would you do in that case?
Okay, so
some people, it's just not there, is it?
No, it is. No, it isn't. And you're thinking, "Geez, I need to get away."
Yeah, discreetly, politely, and how? and quick.
So you could just be, yeah, I mean, I take a while before I give up because I always think there's going to be something here. But you are right, there are occasions, and then you just, I mean, obviously it depends on the situation. If it's a situation where you can walk away, then you're just going to be quite straightforward and say, really nice to meet you. I'm going to circulate a bit now. Hopefully we'll meet up again later. And please don't feel that you've got to keep staying there to be polite. It's hideous, because what you've got to realize is that the other person is probably thinking
the same way.
The same. So you're doing them a favor, really, because they're probably just really struggling with the situation, full stop. And yeah, do what you can to help and facilitate, and don't push it, and don't. But if at
the same time, I'm thinking like in networking events kind of scenario, and for those that don't understand what that is, it's a bunch of either salespeople or entrepreneurs that meet up for breakfast, for dinner, whatever, and there's some mingling before and after. And I have been in the situation of said mingling before breakfast, and the person quite clearly had nothing to do with me, didn't like me, it was, or it was there. But literally abandoned me on my own by saying what you've just said. Oh, I need to go and circulate, which is absolutely fine. I was very happy to be left on my own, but I was like literally plonked on my own. And I thought, if I was someone who was brand new, or, I would have really struggled and felt abandoned and like I wasn't worth anything.
If you feel that somebody is kind of new, I've quite often. I have actually, gone up to people who I think are kind of struggling on their own and are new and don't know anyone, and started a conversation. And then if that's a little bit tricky and stilted, not only do I not want to then hog them anyway, because if they're new, they ought to be meeting more people. So I would then try
introduce them to
introduce somebody else. You should have a little bit of a sense of thinking, do you know what, this person would probably get on with this person. Maybe it's another quiet person, or somebody in a similar industry. I don't know, but you just say, oh, have you met so-and-so? Oh, no, blah, blah, blah. And then you can sidle off without it looking rude. The thing is, you can be reasonably direct. I think in communication, it's better to say, I'm going to move on because I've got to circulate, rather than, I need to go and get a coffee, and it all feels a bit awkward, like you're just trying to
get rid of them.
Yeah. But yeah, it's a nice idea to go and try and introduce them to somebody else, or at least say, would you like a coffee, or something that makes it feel, obviously, did you ever go on any dates where I did go through a phase of doing, internet dating. And so I did. So you walk into the space and you think, oh no, they don't.
I had one in particular. Yeah, I recall one in particular, but I'm not going to talk about it because the person could be identified, as it were, or not identified. But if they ever listened to this, they would know. That it's best to have to go in. But I know what you mean. And sometimes it is
very awkward. Well, because we're nice people, Sophie, it is very difficult if you're generally well brought up.
So you started me off. There's one in particular talking about communication and listening. Right, I went to meet this chap. I made it quite clear I wasn't necessarily overly interested, but anyway, we met up and he started explaining they was having these issues with his flat. And he was contacting the management company. This is about an hour in. I've already finished my drinks. I really want to go now. And he started explaining everything he'd put in the letter to said management company around this flat issue, whatever it was. And and I couldn't shut him up. And then he said that this letter was 28 pages long and we were on page 3. And I just died. And even as I was getting up, saying, look, I'm really sorry, I have to go. Right, I'm standing up and he's still carrying on, kind of following me into the car park. So it was horrendous. And he had absolutely no self-awareness, but I couldn't care less.
That's the thing, is you can't. I sometimes think I cannot believe that you are not picking up, because although I try to do all the right things, and especially as a communication expert, you're full of all the right things to do with communication. You're trying hard, but the occasions happen when you really want to escape it, and you're giving off ever increasingly obvious signals, and the person doesn't pick them up. So that person is in a bad way, really, because they are in a bubble. They have, as you say, they've got self-awareness, they've got no awareness of other people's vibes at all. I mean, that's a weird place to be. I don't know about you, but I sometimes go the other way. I sometimes, with the whole kind of maybe imposter syndrome type head on, I might sometimes think, oh, this person doesn't like me, or this person doesn't want to talk to me, or this person's not interested in me. And maybe I go into that mode, and I'm kind of backing off from something before I need to. I would be more likely to do that than the other way, I think.
Without being paranoid, I think we know when someone's not interested, you know? We just do.
Yeah.
Talking of which, so if we were in the workplace and I'm now an employee, and I want to communicate something that's not going to go down well with my boss, for instance, I've had this idea and I think it would be really good, but I know that they're not going to go for it because, I don't know, because I've had the idea and they haven't. How would you advise communication in the workplace? Because I found a lot of the time people are too scared to voice their opinions.
Yeah, it's really hard, and there are so many situations where I'm like, this comes with a health warning, because unfortunately there are situations, especially bigger corporations and organizations, where you literally might be in danger of being demoted, bullied out, and losing your job by voicing an opinion, which is hideous. But I'd be unrealistic if I tried to say, oh, there's always a way through this, because actually sometimes there isn't, which is very sad. But I know from stories I've heard that exists. If that isn't the case, and I hope not, if it is, I would suggest leaving and going somewhere else. That's easier said than done. Anyway, clarity is a big thing. I've actually got a book on my shelf, and it's called Clarity, and it's absolutely delicious, because clarity, and I've got another book called Brief, actually, so there we go. If you start, all right, I did a role play with a client recently, who had a really difficult meeting with somebody. It was actually somebody on her team, a senior member of her team, and she was the senior management. So, but we role played this conversation, and I realized what was kind of going wrong. This person was talk. I'm very passionate about this talk, and this and that and that, and coming further into me, as a body language coming into me. And I thought, if I'm that person, two things. One, take a breath and allow me in here, because I'm not in. But two, what if that person you're talk to is absolutely entrenched in their own opinion, and they have no sense that they're going to listen to you anyway, and they literally are not listening. So all that's happening is you're expanding masses of energy, emotional energy, and getting nowhere. And I gave the example of if you were talking to a teenager, okay, so this teenager comes up to you and says, hey, I want to borrow something, obviously, can I borrow the car? And you say no, because no, it's not insurance. I want, oh no, really, because I got this thing and I need this thing and I got this thing and I got blah blah. I got it. He goes, well, no, you say, and then you start trying to be this lovely person and very supportive. So you start talking about how you really care and you'd like to support them with this thing, and as they go through life this will happen, and they need to learn these things about boundaries and things, and insurance of course is important, because and all of a sudden you've gone into life in the universe and you have totally wasted your time, because the teenager is there thinking, I want to borrow the car. So all that lovely stuff you've just given on a lecture on the world is wasted. And I think that applies in all these situations. Keep to fairly shortish, clear chunks. Stop, pause, ask for their perspective, their feedback. Do they understand where you're coming from on this? Is there something they now want to contribute? Then go to the next stage. That is That is what I would say was a key thing that people sometimes get wrong, because for a start, as you just said, I'm going in here, I know they're not going to like well, for a start, you've got to do some positive visualization. Yeah. So start to think, do you know what? This is a good idea. And there isn't really any reason why they might not go with this. Let's give this a go. This could be interesting. So you need to go with the right body language before you even open the door. So that energy that comes off is not fighty. And then, as I say, get to the point. Nice.
I think that's what I was just about to say. It has to be constructive. A lot of the time people just waffle on, and that doesn't get you anywhere, because people start getting bored, start thinking about what we're going to have for dinner. Do you know what I mean? The waffling is not helpful. You need to be concise and constructive.
Yeah, absolutely constructive. And so don't sort of couch everything in a way that is defensive, because that's what people tend to do, don't they, when they feel that they're putting an opinion forward that might not be accepted. So you keep it open, and be open, obviously, to the other person's
point of view.
We've had loads of controversial conversations recently in politics, blah blah. You know, there are people with very entrenched views on both sides of a thing that I won't mention, and I've had conversations with people on the other side, if you like, which have been good conversations, and they've been good because I've been open to hearing what they've been open. They're not fighty.
That's exactly that. It's a pure NLP thing. You know, you've got your own map of the world. The person's got their own map of the world. You both believe them to be right. And if you want someone to at least not agree with you, but understand your opinion and, appreciate your opinion, you've got to appreciate theirs. So you've got to go to them so that, they understand that they are validated, and you may not agree with them, but you are listening to their point of view so that they then listen to yours. If you're entrenched, quite literally throwing stuff at each other, you don't gain anything from it.
No.
So we kind of not quite running out of time, because there's no time thing really on these things, but there is a little bit. So finally, what final advice would you give to someone who maybe struggles to voice their opinion or put the point across in any setting? So that could be in a family setting, at work, just in general.
Okay, I think it comes back again to the message that you're giving yourself to begin with in your own head. So if you are thinking, nobody's going to listen to this is probably a stupid idea, nobody ever listens to my ideas, their ideas are much better, and a whole host of comparing things that are not healthy.
And negative self-talk, once again.
Yeah, but then you've given yourself a very bad starting point. So the first thing probably is to just be a bit more rational, not emotional, and think, actually there's a lot to this opinion or idea that I'm going to give, and I think it's quite valid, and let's go for this. I'm quite up for having a conversation about it. So that's the first thing, is your mindset as you go in, and then as you progress, don't be fighty. Don't deliver it in a fighty way. Deliver it in a, this is interesting. That's the message that you should have in your head, that they're getting. This is interesting, isn't it? Rather than, this is how it is.
I get what you mean.
So I just think, again, it's the vibes, it's picking up their vibes, it's the listening, it's the openness, it's the self-talk that isn't all about, oh geez, everyone's going to think I'm being stupid and judge me, and just getting out of your head, being present, and allowing it to flow a bit. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for your time. It was lovely talking to you and finding out more.
And
thank you. If you enjoyed the show, then please subscribe, and you can leave us a review as well. And more importantly, come back for the next episode. Thank you.